So I welcome representatives from Internet Australia. For the Hansard record, could you each give your name and the capacity in which you're appearing today, please?
I'm Laurie Patton and I'm the Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you.
I'm George Fong and I'm the Chair.
And I'm Paul Brooks and I'm the Vice Chair.
Thank you. Do you wish to make an opening statement, Mr. Patton? Thank you.
I would, thank you. So yes, my name's Laurie Patton and I am the Chief Executive of Internet Australia. With me today are our Chair George Fong and our Vice Chair Dr Paul Brooks. Prior to taking on my role with Internet Australia, I spent more than 2 decades as a television executive. I ran a community television station that began continuously live streaming in 2009. Something that the networks are now starting to do, and I'd be happy to talk more about trends in the delivery of audiovisual material in the context of this hearing. Mr Fong is ideally placed to speak about the NBN delivery process, as he will finally be connected on the 17th of this month. Living and working in Ballarat, which is the gateway to regional Western Central Victoria, Mr Fong is also able to talk with authority about the special requirements of people in regional and rural areas, and has worked closely with a number of local regional councils to develop their ICT strategies. He's also Deputy Chancellor of Federation University, which is increasingly developing its learning and teaching strategies based around the ability to use smart and connected technologies. Dr Brooks is a telecommunications engineer and broadcast expert who has been building internet businesses and broadband networks for more than 20 years. He's advised the Department of Communications, ACMA and the ACCC and other similar operators internationally on technology, construction and operational issues. Dr Brooks was Chief Technology Officer for Transact here in Canberra, so he knows firsthand what's required for a wide-scale residential fibre optic and copper broadband network. In relation to the NBN specifically, Dr Brooks was appointed by the Communications Alliance to lead its NBN task force, the telecommunications industry's engagement with the fledgling NBN. So Dr Brooks has the rare, if not unique, benefit of knowing as much about the technology as the learned academics who spoke earlier, while also having considerable experience in the commercial world. Someone sometime today is bound to exclaim, surely this isn't rocket science. Well, you can rest assured that we've come prepared for that contingency. Dr Brooks is indeed our very own rocket scientist. In his spare time, he's also on the board of the Interplanetary Network chapter of the Global Internet Society, where he's working on the next generation of delay and disruption-tolerant networking internet protocols, whatever that is, designed to extend the internet into space. I should note for the record that Internet Australia is the peak body representing internet users. We are a broad member-based not-for-profit, not an industry lobby group. Our mission, helping shape our internet future, is to promote access to the internet for the benefit of the whole community, including business, educational, government and private internet users. We're a chapter of the Global Internet Society, which was established in 1992 by the people who built the internet. The Internet Society is the largest global network of people and organisations focused on the formulation of international internet protocols and regulations. Internet Australia's members hold a range of views about the way in which we can best benefit from the internet. However, we all believe in the fundamentally positive role that the internet is playing and the need for an open, accessible and trustworthy internet. If the internet is to reach its potential for good, it's essential that we make it available to everyone. In the 21st century, to be without access to the internet is like not having other basic services like electricity and water. The ability to participate in our digitally enabled future is a basic right of all Australians. Gaining employment and engaging in a wide range of community activities will increasingly require digital skills and internet access. We need to build our economic and social future around a connected world where everyone has access to the internet and knows how to use it. Innovation is much talked about these days, especially in this place. But how can we expect to become a leading player in a digitally enabled world without a world-class broadband network? The fundamental question that must be asked is, what sort of broadband capabilities are we likely to need, both in the immediate future and beyond? My colleagues will address, from a technical point of view, this issue shortly. However, here are some indicators of the forces that are at play. We've seen streaming video platforms, Netflix, Presto and Stan, launched here in the past 12 months. They've already had an impact on network congestion, according to a range of reports. It's now been announced that Netflix intends to produce 600 hours of 4K programming, ultra-high definition television. It won't be long before Australian consumers expect to be able to receive this content. Gradually, all the capital city free-to-air television networks are adding live streaming of their terrestrial channels. The Interactive Games and Entertainment Association reports a continuing trend of double-digit growth year on year as consumers increasingly become accustomed to purchasing downloadable versions of games, not to mention playing them live. Oh, the internet, oops, sorry, I've just lost my place there. Can you find me again, please? I won't be a second.
It's that reliability.
The Internet of Things, yes, that's what happens, like technology. The Internet of Things, sometimes called the industrial internet, is creating a plethora of new products, both for commercial and private use. Each of these devices requires internet access. Government departments and agencies are increasingly moving to online delivery of services. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The provision of health services and education is being revolutionised, courtesy of products that rely on fast broadband. Banking, shopping and numerous other business activities that were traditionally done face-to-face are moving online. And of course there's virtual reality and augmented reality about to revolutionise everything from gaming to a range of commercial applications. A moment ago I referred to our need to compete internationally. In that regard, it's worth noting a report out of the UK called Ultra-Fast Britain. This report was released by the Institute of Directors, a group you would presume to have taken a fairly even-handed approach to this issue. The report calls for households and businesses to have access to internet speeds of 10 gigabits per second by 2030. That might sound ambitious, but it gives us a clue to the sort of speeds we might eventually need to provide if we want to keep up with comparable countries. Either of my colleagues could expand on this if you want to pursue that issue. Included in the report I just referred to, it found that 78% of UK company directors believe that significantly faster broadband speeds would increase their company's productivity. 60% thought it would make their businesses more competitive. In preparing for our appearance here today, we carried out a survey of our members, and we only had about 50 respondents because we only did it over the weekend, and we certainly wouldn't regard this as being scientifically rigorous, but the results certainly matched the anecdotal evidence that we regularly receive from our members, many of whom are ISPs and most of whom are very technically literate. In terms of overall satisfaction with the NBN, we didn't get anyone who was satisfied. 20% were neutral, 43% were dissatisfied, and 47% were very dissatisfied. In terms of the the multi-technology mix, 4% were satisfied, 16% were neutral, 47% were dissatisfied, and 33% were very dissatisfied. And in terms of NBN speeds being sufficient for customer needs in 5 to 10 years, 6% said yes, 78% said no, and 16% said they don't know. So in summary, the view of Internet Australia was we need to take the politics out of the NBN and adopt the Nike principle. Just do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Did Mr. Fong and Dr. Brooks, did you want to make any additional comments?
I think just what I'd like to do is just open by talking about our experiences in Ballarat, which have been very positive. It's been a hard battle to get things into place. Very early on, regional Victoria recognised the fact that we needed a better broadband solution. And in Ballarat, we've been fairly lucky. I started a small ISP in 1994 in the dial-up days, and we were hoping to get maybe 20 customers by the end of the first quarter and basically subsidise our own internet at home. We got those numbers within the first week, and we were out of control for 6 years trying to keep up with demand. There was a very articulate and very urgent response to the technologies that we were putting down, and we didn't realise what we were getting into. One of the examples of that was that the district liaison principal of Ararat, which is a town up the road from Ballarat, sat on my doorstep for 2 weeks asking us when we were going to come up to Ararat to hook them up. The council came down to us and said, "We will house your equipment, just get up here." And in those days, the VicTaz planning for Telstra was based in Ballarat, and they assisted us in designing how we were to go up there. The district liaison principal didn't talk to me for about a year after that, and when we did finally catch up after we had sold the company 6 years later, he said he was afraid that he was going to drive us broke by sending us up there. The result was that there was an extremely high uptake of dial-up in Ararat, in Ballarat, in Horsham, and around the region, and it never stopped. It was inexorable, and we had to use all sorts of ways around local call problems. We used a technology called CDNO to divert calls to exchanges so everybody got a local call. Telstra didn't like it, but the ACCC says, nope, not until you bring something else in. So from a very early stage, we were aware that this technology was, to use a hackneyed phrase, transformative of the regions. And we've continued on that process. I've been involved with the Grampians Rural Health Alliance Network, which is a network that stretches from the suburbs of Melbourne to the borders of South Australia. And that health network has formed the backbone of all of the allied health services in that region. And it's been a fundamental part of how things have been done. Of the NBN, we believe that the NBN is not just timely, but it's a catch-up process for us. We had, for a very long time, been trying to say to people, we need better, and it was quite clear in our regions that the commercial market wasn't addressing our needs. When the National Broadband Network as a concept came out, I think it was greeted with great enthusiasm by many people in regional areas. The market had simply failed us. As a result of that, many of the local regional councils came to us and said, look, what do we do? What do we need to do to try and get this sort of technology in? It was an unfocused but enthusiastic response. Over time, we have helped them manage to focus not on an ICT strategy, but on social and economic strategies which have a component of ICT within them. And I think that's been fairly effective. But there has been a very patient wait in many of those councils for this technology to arrive. And I'll talk later about Warrnambool, where we are redoing their ICT strategy at this point in time. And of course, Warrnambool is a classic example of where, when you take away valuable telecommunications, in this case, it was an exchange fire that took them out. The case study in terms of the impact on that community was profound. Ballarat itself is a reasonably good story as far as the early rollout of NBN is concerned, but it wasn't without its problems, and I will again address some of those issues that NBN Co faced up to and dealt with during the rollout in the brownfields areas especially. I'll stop there and I'll let Paul.
Yeah, thank you. We hear a lot in the debate on this topic about technologies and about download speeds. We'd like to focus on other aspects of the technology choice, and primarily on the experiences that your average man on the street, man and woman on the street, and customers have of these networks. I understand how the technologies all work. I understand the trade-offs and the pros and cons of them all. But we have this unnatural fixation on download speed as a determinant of what people are getting. Increasingly, more and more people are looking for upload speed, not download speed, for what they do. That would fix Senator Ludlam and your problem with uploading those files to Sweden. And every other small business in this country could do with a focus on upstream speed, not downstream speed, because that ultimately affects the services they provide. Every wedding photographer that's working out of their home doing their video image processing and then having to send their portfolio out to their customers understands how frustrating it is to be limited by a technology which is fundamentally throttled in terms of the amount of information they can send, not just passively receive. So it's not about 4K video, it's about being able to produce content, being able to send out information. Not just content, in terms of video content, but things like the robustness and improvement in security for all of Australia's businesses if people could routinely use off-site backups for their computers and have their content streaming securely away from their premises, so that if the computer gets stolen overnight or the place burns down, they still have all of their business records. Most businesses smaller than a certain size do their backups by plugging an external hard drive into a port on the back of the computer, leaving it on top of the computer, and it burns down with the computer when the premises goes down. Universal broadband, which is close to symmetric in terms of the outbound capacity they could do, would have a huge impact on business community and the residential community for this country. With the infrastructure experience for people getting connected, there is a real problem with the perception of NBN connections. It's not entirely NBN's fault, but it's something that NBN can improve. We have a situation where NBN gives information to contractors and the contractors turn up at the customer's house. NBN also gives information to ISPs. The ISPs give information to the end users. End users aren't allowed to talk to NBN Co, and they don't get to talk to the contractor until the contractor turns up. So you end up with a situation at people's houses where you have a contractor who's given information from one party and an end user who has information they can barely understand from an ISP who may or may not have interpreted the information from NBN correctly, trying to drill holes in the wall and actually install the technology. And there are some absolute horror stories out there of botched installations for where contractors, for want of a better word, are essentially telling the customer whatever they need to tell them to get the most expedient, shortest possible time frame for an install, and installing big boxes of flashing lights in the middle of the formal lounge room wall, completely contrary to the installation instructions provided by NBN Co in many cases. So we'd like to see a much better coordination of information flow and much better enforcement of standards and inspections by NBN Co of end user installations, because the end result of all that is people out in the wider community are getting horrendous installations if the contractor turns up on time. They have no idea when they're going to get connected. In many cases, they have no idea what they're going to get connected with, because that is not explained to them beforehand. And in terms of one of the trade-offs with a fibre network compared to a fibre to the node or a copper-based network or even HFC, these other technologies are highly variable in what they deliver. And in general, a customer has no idea what they might be able to get until somebody actually turns up and connects it up, suck it and see. So we have a real problem at the moment with customers that are signing up with ISPs for speeds that they're actually unable to arrange and to achieve once the thing gets turned on. Technician turns up, connects up the service, finds out they can only get, let's say they signed up for 140 and the connection can only do 70. They're now in a situation where they need to negotiate with the ISP to somehow subscribe to a lower base tier because they've subscribed to a more costly speed tier that they can't actually achieve and get. And many ISPs are not allowing that downgrade to happen, and so people end up paying for a lot more than what they can actually physically receive. On a fibre network, that doesn't happen because it essentially has infinite capacity, and so you can guarantee that whatever the customer ordered is what the customer is going to get, and the customer knows this before anyone turns up to the house. HFC, fibre to the node, any of these other technologies, the customer fundamentally has no idea what they're going to be able to achieve, and whether what they will achieve is actually what they will be able to use and what they need for their use case. One of the issues that is going to raise its head, and I suspect this committee might see this more and more, is installations into apartment buildings. They are an area where the NBN rollout has largely bypassed, and to be fair, HFC cable networks are largely bypassed apartment buildings as well, and things like that. There is a real issue. Communications Alliance is trying to address it at the moment with some standards where fibre to the node installations where there is a fibre to the basement and a box of electronics in the basement using existing copper wiring up the building. You get 2 of those or 3 of those running in the same building, and they will cross-interfere with each other in the same way that DSL does in the streets. Net result of that is that customers who sign up for a certain package and get a certain speed when they first sign up, over time, over the next 2, 5, 10 years, their speeds are actually going to degrade, and they will get less and less and less service over times where in fact what they will probably be needing is more and more and more service. That unpredictability and that variability I think is something that is going to bite us in future years. HFC has the same issue, and HFC, NBN Co aren't providing it. One of the issues with the cable networks is that there are many houses in the cable footprint that are not connected, do not have a cable, do not have access to the technology. I'm in a fairly residential leafy suburb of Sydney. I've got people in a stone's throw who have no fixed line broadband at all. They're too far from the exchange to get DSL, and they didn't run any cable connection down their cul-de-sac, or their driveway was too long because they're on a battle axe block, and they're trying to struggle on with a cellular dongle because that's the only broadband their house can get. We've got to ensure that NBN Co not only does the technology changes they need to make at the head end to enable the technology to work, but also extends the cable, runs new infrastructure through the streets, down the long driveways, into the cul-de-sacs and into the pockets where the cable connections were never run in the first deployments. It won't be acceptable for there to be 6 houses down the end of a cul-de-sac that still can't connect to any broadband network. I'll leave that there, and we'll take some questions on some other issues if you wish.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a myriad of questions. Can I know it's sort of taking the last point first. These installation problems, are people coming to you, your organisation, to make complaints? Is that how you're hearing them, or you just, because you're immersed in it?
We're immersed in it. We get reports from users. Hey, this is what my experience. There are a number of online forums where people talk about their experiences and things like that. I've been involved in some consultancies where we've tried to collate some of these experiences and feed them back into the process so that the processes can be improved. But it's still an issue. There are official forums where people can, say, complain to the TIO and things like that. But a lot of it is out there is simply people looking for advice. I think I'm going to get connected to the NBN. What should I expect? What can I expect? And what they're telling us is that they're not getting any information they can use from their ISP. And we have an information flow which is basically mandated, where end users are not allowed to talk to NBN Co. NBN Co does not talk directly to end users. Sometimes they hold community forums in an area where there's a network about to be rolled out. But what's supposed to happen is NBN provides all the information to the ISP, and the end customer asks their ISP, because they're the guys that are getting billed at the end of the day, and the ISP is supposed to know everything. But the reality is that's not working. And so people are being left in the dark about what they can expect, and they don't know enough to know when the guy turns up at the house and does something which is actually fundamentally wrong, or tells them, oh, we can't connect you because you haven't got line of sight to the antenna, and things like that. They don't know enough. There's no knowledgeable person that they can call in to say, hey, this can't be right, can it? And so we end up fielding a lot of those emails that have come in and say, what's going on, what should be happening here? So
what's the formal complaints mechanism, and is it working?
I don't think there is one.
Senators, I might just describe the experiences that we've had in Ballarat, which I have been involved with at a fairly intimate level. The reasons why are unclear, in the sense that I've had a role in technology in Ballarat for a very long time, so I was a natural lightning rod for a whole number of things. And old ladies and men who have been on our system years ago ring me and say, what do we do? And I give them the advice. I've also had a fairly close relationship with the community management teams in Melbourne of NBN Co, and I think it's fair to say that sometimes we are on the phone together on an almost daily basis. my discussions with the City Council have been fairly important to me in terms of learning what's going on the ground, and certainly civil and planning issues have been a major issue in Ballarat. I think it was advertised in the papers that there were quite literally thousands of remediation notices issued in Ballarat because of what's effectively second-rate work that was done by contractors, and in many cases either the contractors had to come back or there needed to be some sort of compensatory processes to fix the problems. And bear in mind, Ballarat's a heritage city, so effectively the areas that were affected tended to have a magnified impact on the residents. So what happened was that it was clear to us that some of the people in NBN Co weren't necessarily tuned into the people that were actually doing the rollouts, and the complaints weren't going through the right channel. So we short-circuited that process, and there was quite literally a team appointed from NBN Co to meet with the council on a regular basis to actually work out what the problems were. It was painful, and at times it was very tense and combative between the two groups. But over time, the council and NBN Co worked out a situation as to how to fix those problems. And the message from the City Council that I'm able to carry is that it was a successful and good outcome, and everything that we learned, we hope, will be passed on to other towns. Now, in terms of communications, up and down the Western Highway in the earlier days of the rollout, we had very difficult times talking to councils saying we're not going to be in the NBN footprint, we're not going to get NBN. And we had to remind them constantly that the uncontroversial promise of the NBN is 100% coverage in time. And so what we had was a need to try and dispel some of the myths about what this rollout was all about. And I spent a lot of time doing that, talking to councils and talking to groups. And then NBN Co, for instance, would need to talk to people, and they said, how are we going to do this, you know, on a wholesale basis? They did hold roadshows in Ballarat. They did so on a regular basis. They did talk regularly to council. And what we did as Internet Australia, we actually had a round table, and we brought business and community groups together in order to apprise them of what we thought was going to happen as far as the NBN was concerned. And that was fairly effective. And what we now have is a communications channel that says if NBN is going to do something major, like turn off copper, what we will do is bring them around a round table of business and community groups and council and say, let's plan this out. Your job as a business group, your job as a community group is to go back through your stakeholders and make sure that they are informed. We're never going to hit 100%, but that sort of process takes place, and we have engagement with the local media. And I had until the end of this last year a weekly slot on ABC Regional where I was able to talk about these issues, and it was very fortunate that we had that, so we could do those sorts of things objectively. So that process for us is now being reflected in other towns. I'd have to say that we're probably luckier than most, and certainly in terms of some suburbs where there isn't that ability to pull these sorts of groups together might face different challenges. But certainly we, in Ballarat, we've been quite fortunate to be able to forge through that process and have a concentrated attempt in creating that relationship with NBN Co, which we think has been very important.
Yeah, I think the takeaway from that is that while Ballarat's been very fortunate having people like George and people putting their voluntary time in as community leaders to try to mix and match and pull the people who know what's going on together to talk to the people who want to know, that's not happening universally around the country.
That would be my observation as well. I think you're pretty unique. Yeah.
I think this goes back to the beginning process of setting up the NBN, and what we're now coming to is the point where there is actually a lot of signing up of customers starting to occur. I remember going back 4 or 5 years that in talking to NBN, it was the view of NBN that it wasn't their job to promote broadband. That was the job of the RSPs, and many of the RSPs, of course, are ISPs, and many of them are our members. It's interesting just to reflect that with the data retention legislation, one of the problems that we're facing there is that nobody actually knows how many ISPs there are, but we think there's more than 400. Now, what we've really got now is a situation where NBN is building something, but it's actually 400 different organisations who are then going to have to deliver it. And I think where NBN could probably be more helpful now that they're actually rolling out, is to actually engage more with the RSPs so that people do actually know it's coming, and probably they've got a multitude of different sources. The cable is going to come to their house, but they can purchase access from a multitude of different people. They're the people that should be solving their problems, but as George and Paul explained earlier, they're not in possession of the knowledge to be able to really assist their customers. And I think Paul and George is right that Ballarat's been very lucky that they've got the chair of the of Internet Australia. Otherwise, that probably wouldn't be happening there.
Can you come and live in my town for a while?
As a former ISP, I think I can say quite genuinely that ISPs can tend to be laggards in this area. They don't want to do anything until it's absolutely necessary to do it, and that's been part of the problem. And I do know that members of the community engagement teams within NBN Co have been frustrated with that process of talking to the RSPs and trying to pull them up. There was an incident about 18 months ago where I berated the ISPs publicly on radio, and one rather large telco, the rep of one rather large telco, tore strips off me for saying that I wasn't allowed to talk about his particular company in that context, and they've done a lot. It was 3 months down the track before he attacked me, and I noticed there was a far more junk mail going into people's post boxes. So I thought that was a reasonable outcome, even though the response was somewhat combative. It's interesting that that same person was in the papers, the local courier, the courier.com.au, our local paper, saying that Telstra has now experienced a surge in data usage in Ballarat as a result of NBN being hooked up. And that was said in an article, I think it was yesterday, in the Courier yesterday. Now that to me indicates that we are starting to make a progress in terms of what is going on the ground. And people are starting to take up this technology. We have clear evidence of people saying, I'm going to buy a house somewhere, where's the NBN? And that sort of thing is happening. We have businesses that are starting to think differently. And again, as part of our very good fortune, my business is on the Ballarat Technology Park Central, which is a building in the CBD. For some years, we have been arguing with NBN Co as to how they were going to roll out the fibre in this building, because we thought it was going to be what's known as an MDU, or a multi-dwelling unit. They classified it as complex, which means they didn't know what to do with it. And that's fair enough. I mean, this is challenging stuff. At the end of the day, we managed to negotiate a situation where they have put an NTD in every single suite of the building, and that, as a technology park, is a huge advance in what those companies can do in that building. As far as that's concerned, what we're looking at is investment. This network is an investment over a long period of time, and we need to take advantage of it. People keep talking about costs. You know, from a regional point of view, we're not looking at that. We're looking at the investment and the amortisation over that investment over 20, 30, 40, 50 years. We do get frustrated when we hear about the fact that it's going to cost this much to put this technology and cost that much to put that technology in. It's a real problem when we are seeing changes happen on the ground as a result of the technology being rolled out.
Thank you. Okay, I've got one more question and I'll hand over to my colleagues. Do you have a formal relationship either with NBN as your organisation, with NBN Co or with government in terms of a way of communicating?
Not formally with NBN Co. We're not a service provider.
No. But you're the representative body of internet users.
That's
so you're
correct.
Representing me.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
I can come to you and you can tell somebody something.
But in terms of NBN Co, so can whoever your ISP might be at home. We certainly, individuals within the organisation have ties in with individuals with NBN Co, so it's more of an informal feedback mechanism and information flow. Formally, no. We have formal ties in through ACAN, the consumer representative body, and I was here last week, I think, talking at the ACAN event, talking about end user experiences with broadband for that sort of thing. So that's where some of that feeds through.
That makes sense.
We do actually deal with them quite regularly in terms of keeping them appraised of what we're saying, and they actually give us a heads up as to things they're doing, like, for example, the $40 million employment program. We talk about those sorts of things, so we do have a very good relationship with them, and I do certainly talk to them regularly.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Senator Ludlam?
Yeah, if I could, we're a bit short of time, so I guess I've only got a couple of quick questions to put to you. Mr. Brooks, or Dr. Brooks, you spoke of a fibre network having essentially infinite capacity,
Yes.
Unless I heard you wrong. That's a pretty big call.
Yes.
Do you want to just, in non-technical terms, explain why you'd make a call as big as that?
Yep.
Infinite capacity. Maybe I'll just roll all. I've got 3 questions for you, and whoever wants to take them on, please be welcome to do so. The second one, I guess, I'm maybe kind of pinching some of Senator Johnson's thunder a little bit around what will we use this network for? Because we've been kind of buried in this engineering debate for as long as I've been involved in what will we build, what will it cost, where will it go. But the question of what will we use it for, with the least number of references to higher definition television that you can manage, would be fantastic. And the third question being, if you are suddenly in control of the executives, you're on the Treasury bench and you can choose what to do from here in the here and now, what's your advice to the committee? Just 3 real easy questions for you.
Excellent. I'll take the first one. Once you have the glass in the ground, the speed that it can do is governed entirely by the boxes at the end, and you can swap those over for about 5% of the capex of the network. I'm currently working in the submarine cable industry. The same thing happens for submarine cables. We've seen submarine cables, the glass on the ocean bed last for 30 years. You can upgrade the equipment on the end 5, 6, 7 times and have it 1,000 times more capacity at the end than you have at the beginning. With the fibre to the premises rollout using GPON technology, that was able to provide anything up to 1 gigabit per second per house.
How does that compare to present day internet speeds on VDSL in Australia?
10 times faster.
10 times?
Yeah. VDSL 2 is essentially limited to about 100 to 110 megabits per second, no more if you are very close to the node. If you are 500 metres to 1,000 metres away from the node, you'll only get maximum 50, maybe 60. So you'll be prevented from ordering any speed faster than that, and it will not be upgradable to anything. It will need to be ripped out to be able to do anything faster.
Okay.
Now, that may not need to be done for 5 years, maybe 10 years. It'll guaranteed need to be done for 15. With fibre, we're already seeing services in Singapore and Hong Kong rolled up with the next generation of PON technology, 10 gig PON. So they're now offering 10 gigabit residential services in Singapore and Hong Kong using the next generation of hardware to what we've put into the fibre of the premises today. All NBN Co would need to do right now is switch a purchase order, and that service would be available on the Australian the Australian fibre plant that's being deployed for fibre of the premises today. The next evolvement from there is what's called WDM PON, wave division multiplexing, still a passive one, uses exactly the same glass in the ground, but effectively gives each customer their own dedicated colour, their own dedicated wavelength. That's a game changer, because on a optical networking perspective, we're now running 100 gigabits to 200 gigabits per wavelength.
Right.
And that technology would effectively allow us to deliver not just 1 gigabit, but 200 gigabits to every single house that's connected to a fibre network, with no more capital expenditure than an extra 5 or 10% of what's being rolled out now to change the boxes at the head end and the boxes in the house.
Can I pre-order mine in green? Is it
Sorry?
Can I pre-order mine in green?
You can have it whichever colour you like. They'll generally be colours in infrared, so you won't be able to see it anyway.
Okay. So tell us about what people would use these, these very, very rapid speeds for. And again, the fewer references you can manage to work into television, the better.
I'm going to mention 4K once,
Okay.
and I'm going to make the observation that a few years ago a former Prime Minister said, I'm not going to build a broadband network so that people can watch television.
Correct. That's what I'm trying to get us away
Right,
from.
yes. However, people are watching television on it, and 4K will come and 8K will come, and we're already hearing examples of people finding it difficult to do other things on the internet because of the congestion. So, so Paul's comments about speed are really important. in terms of what people are going to use it for, as I said in my introductory remarks, there's a lot of talk about us becoming an innovation nation. And on both sides of the House, there are people that I'm well acquainted with who are traipsing around the world looking at how we're going to compete as a hub for innovation. And as Paul just related the story in Singapore, we keep talking about Singapore and Israel. They're building broadband networks that will leave us behind. The sort of things that it's going to be used for that are really, really going to be important are for health and education, particularly in regional areas. It will be, television will be there, but there are so many other uses that we need the speed, and we need, as Paul said earlier, we need the upload speeds, because it's not just about sitting there and passively watching television. We don't know what the future will be, but what we do know is the speeds and the capabilities that we're building now are clearly being recognised as inadequate around the world.
If I can use an analogy, every single car on the market in Australia has a speedo that goes up to around 190, 200, 220. We don't expect to ever use the car to that level. But imagine how limiting it would be to the Australian economy if every single car on the market had a speedo that went to 65, because the speed limit in the majority is 60, and nobody could ever go any faster than that or use it for anything more. It's about making sure that the headroom is so far ahead of what we are likely to need that people can use seamlessly whatever the amount is that they need. The US government, I think it was the National Institute of Science and Technology, I think it was, came up with a brilliant definition of what broadband was, and this was 10 years ago. Broadband to a house is whatever speed you need so that your link to your house is not the bottleneck. Right? You can effectively breathe without having to, and do whatever you need to do without having to worry about whether the capacity is there or not, because it means your energy can then be focused on achieving the goals of your business, achieving the goals of whatever it is you're trying to do, and not worried about whether you can't get to do it because your son's uploading something to YouTube at the time and you've got to wait 2 hours to upload your CAD file to something that's creating the next generation pen or whatever the product might be.
Quick case in point,
Go ahead.
In our tiny little data centre in Ballarat, we host medical practice systems and patient data for medical specialists in Melbourne. Half of those medical specialists complain about how slow our system is. It isn't slow, they've got ADSL. Those who have faster speeds are able to go into places like operating theatres, log into our systems and see their patient data on an almost immediate basis, and then come out again, and that's wherever they are. And businesses are moving their services into the cloud. They're moving their equipment away and saying, we don't want it there, we want it somewhere where we can reach it, and we need those speeds.
Concrete example, offline backups that I talked about before. My business, I run from my home most of the time. I have my business records as a consultancy. I set up an offline backup up to Google Cloud to use the cloud and use the technologies. I set this up in November, and it told me that my backup would be finished around the 16th of March 2017, because our upstream speeds are so woeful on the networks that we have. If my house burns down and I need to pull that information back and restore my business records, it will happen faster than that, but it may take 2 weeks at current network speeds to pull that information down. Now, I'm not running a video business. They're simple PDFs and reports and accounting records and that sort of stuff. And what it's stored on has about the average amount of storage capacity of your average PC these days that you buy in the shop. But broadband speeds we have currently are too slow to use offline backup of records in either direction in any sort of meaningful way. You have to be attached to a university with a 100 gig connection to actually have that happen in a reasonable time. So I think we need to move away from applications that are interactive, people generated. More and more we're having machines that are generating files and information automatically and wanting to transfer that to another thing automatically. It's Internet of Things, machine-to-machine communication. It's no longer about being able to download a video in the time it takes to watch a video. It's about having your machine scanning a coffee cup and things like that and being able to send that out in less time than it actually takes to make one or go to the shop and buy one.
Well, I thank all three of you gentlemen for such a legible description. It actually helps to speak of this stuff in plain English. And in the limited time we've got left, if you want to just switch the conversation across to politics, what would you have the Parliament do?
Deploy fibre.
I think we'd probably take the view that we've taken with innovation, where Internet Australia has called for a bipartisan digital future forum. The thing that makes Singapore, Israel, countries like that so superior as technology hubs is because they have a bipartisan strategy. And I know that this is an unrealistic expectation perhaps between now and the election, but after the election, I think what we would like is, in the case of both innovation and specifically the NBN, for there to be a rethink. And I think the point is that the leak yesterday, which is being disputed as these things are, clearly indicating that there are game-changing technologies, and it's time we came together, took the politics out, do as Nike do, and let's just do it.
I think my view would be that that stop talking about cost, start talking about investment, and we need to think investment in capital infrastructure, not over a 2, 3 or 4 year period, but 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Now, if we took that different view and we looked at, for instance, the investment in FTTN, inevitably we will need to factor in the fact that it's going to go away. So if we were to sit down and look at a non-political, technical and economic analysis over that period rather than over shorter periods, I think I'm reasonably confident that fibre would not fare badly in that conversation.
Yeah, we understand there's a business case, but the business case for technologies that are not fibre should take into account the upgrade cost to make it fibre within 10 years as part of working out what the actual cost per home is to deploy that technology now. And if you add that cost into the deployment cost of the original technology and then make a choice as to which one is the most cost-effective one to roll out, that would really be taking a true view of what a broadband network for the benefit of the country actually is.
That's great. I'm done.
Thank you so much. We are running very close to time. Please.
Mr. Patton, just tell us a little bit about Internet Australia. You have obviously constituents or members. How many members do you have? What's your source of funding? I'm interested to know whether you have an R&D budget or anything of that nature. And then I've got one more question before we finish.
Okay, I'm conscious of time, I'll be very quick. So I get paid for 3 days a week. That's the only staff. We have an incredibly talented board, as you can see. We have members in the hundreds, not the thousands, although we do have, over the last year, we've had an increase in the number of organisational members. We're very small. I don't think my colleagues will object too much if I say that we probably were under-utilising our activities till about a year or so ago. The significant part is that we are the Australian chapter of the Global Internet Society, which, as I indicated earlier, is actually the organisation that's vitally involved in things like the ICANN transition, which is to do with changing the way the internet is governed globally, and we are part of that, and our board members are intimately involved in that. So we have a very high level involvement internationally, much less so here in recent times. We don't have any budget for anything, so I'm more than happy to have some, but we have a very good relationship with universities, and my chairman is just pointing out that one of the things that we did a little while ago with the assistance of Senator Ludlam and a representative from each of the other major parties is we've created Parliamentary Friends of the Internet, and the idea of that is to be able to use Chatham House rule to be able to get members of Parliament in with experts in a room and just talk about the sort of things that we've talked about now, so that we obviously have very strong views. Our members have even stronger views about where we should be going in terms of technology. What we principally want to do as Internet Australia is to create a forum for informed debate so that we at least understand the technology that we're talking about, not just the politics.
And education.
Okay, my last question was about cost, because on our side of the table over here, cost is a 4-year equation with budgetary process. We're talking obviously something like a weapons system, chasing technology out of the long period, the delivery of ships or something like that. I just wanted to mention that. I don't want to ask a question about it, but the difficulty for government, I think you might acknowledge, is that we are chasing our tail whilst this runaway technological change is occurring and moving the pendulum left and right in terms of the cost of delivery of the new technology. Now, government is confronted, I think, with a serious issue of trying to quantify, in a reasonable sense, the future cost of achieving these things. I'm interested whether you have at the forefront, very briefly, of your minds, a solution to that problem.
I think firstly, Senator, I think Dr. Brooks nailed it pretty well when he indicated the fact that if we build fibre, it doesn't need upgrade costs of great significance. I think the issue that we would put is that it's actually a bit like roads and rail. We didn't argue whether we needed roads and we didn't argue whether we needed rail. In terms of your analogy of warships, yeah, the technology there is changing, but you can put new technology in old boats. You can rely on fibre to be, I mean, it's fit for purpose and it will be fit in 15 years' time. That's why we say, you know, let's build it now.
Senator, I sympathise with the issue, the dilemma that the government is facing, but the problem is not a negotiable one in the sense that this technology needs to last. This is a nation-building project. It needs to last for a very long period of time, just like the original copper network done, and it's done its job, but it's now ended. There is a need, obviously, to plan within those 4 years, but the original vision of a national broadband network was always going to go beyond those terms, and there isn't any other way of looking at it. Private companies such as Verizon and AT&T, as Mark Gregory had talked about, are now investing long term, and the original cable networks were built by power companies that looked at that amortisation over 30, 40, 50-year periods. So without trying to dismiss the point, I fully understand the point. The fact of the matter is that we need to build for that length of time, and if we don't plan for that, then we will constantly be coming back saying, what are we going to do next?
Yeah,
Thank you, gentlemen.
We didn't plan the Highway 1 between Melbourne through to Sydney through to Brisbane on a 4-year cycle, and the upgrade of the Sydney to Brisbane bit has been, I think, at least a 15 to 20-year type program that I can recall that I've been driving up and down there. We didn't fund that on a 4-year cycle either. We shouldn't be thinking about funding our national communications infrastructure on a 4-year cycle. It's a 40-year investment, and that's the time frame that we need to be thinking about the expenditure.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your evidence today, and the Hansard people may be in touch to get some technical terms clarified. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's good.